because if you don't use your rights, you will lose them. Freedom of the press is the foundation of every single right you have as a Filipino citizen.
Ressa co-founded Rappler that's reported on corruption and the government's so-called war on drugs that's left thousands of Filipinos dead since 2016. President Duterte has banned Rappler staff from covering official events. Activists have described Maria's trial as another existential moment in a country long considered one of the most dangerous places in the world for journalists. Rappler isn't the only news network facing opposition. ABS-CBN is the country's biggest TV network, but was forced to shut down after it was unable to get its franchise renewed by Congress. The businessman who sued Ressa has reportedly been a close ally of the president.
The fundamental right to seek and disseminate information through an independent press is under attack, and part of the assault has become from an unexpected source. Elected leaders in many democracies, who should be press freedom's staunchest defenders, have made explicit attempts to silence critical media voices and strengthen outlets that serve up favorable coverage. The trend is linked to a global decline in democracy itself. The erosion of press freedom is both a symptom of and a contributor to the breakdown of other democratic institutions and principles, a fact that makes it especially alarming.
Freedom of the media or media freedom is the fundamental right of various forms of media. This includes print, radio, television, and online media that operates freely in society without government control, restriction, or censorship. It is where the ability of journalists to report freely on matters of public interest and is a crucial indicator of democracy. A free press can inform citizens of their leaders' successes or failures, convey the people's needs and desires to government bodies, and provide platform for the open exchange of information and ideas. Media freedom can recover much more quickly after a period of authoritarian governance than some other elements of democracy, such as the rule of law. But it is also subject to rapid reversals. When media freedom is restricted, these vital functions break down, leading to poor decision-making and harmful outcomes for leaders and citizens alike.
Sa mga Pilipino na nanonood po, hindi lang po ito tungkol sa Rappler. Hindi lang po ito tungkol sa amin. Tungkol po ito sa inyo. Because freedom of the press is the foundation of every single right you have as a Filipino citizen. We're at the precipice. If we fall over, we're no longer in democracy, and in many ways.
The conviction of a prominent journalist for criminal libel is a devastating blow to media freedom in the Philippines' human rights. On June 15, 2020, a Manila court issued a guilty verdict for Maria Ressa, the founder and executive editor of the news website Rappler, and a Rappler researcher Reynaldo Santos Jr. Rappler reported that Ressa and Santos received an indeterminate sentence with a minimum of 6 months and 1 day and a maximum of 6 years and fines of 200,000 pesos in moral damages and another 200,000 pesos in exemplary damages. The verdict stemmed from one of several cases that the administration of President Rodrigo Duterte instigated to stifle Rappler's critical reporting on the government, particularly its murderous war on drugs, which has killed tens of thousands of people since July 2016. In addition to this case, Ressa and her colleagues faced 7 other cases in various courts for which she was arrested and detained, and posted bail. The verdict against Maria Ressa highlights the ability of the Philippines' abusive leader to manipulate the laws to go after critical, well-respected media voices, whatever the ultimate cost to the country, said Phil Robertson, Deputy Asia Director. The Rappler case will reverberate not just in the Philippines but in many countries that long considered the country a robust environment for media freedom. Veteran Philippine journalist Maria Ressa, a Nobel Peace Prize awardee, has battled multiple legal cases and online abuse in her campaign for press freedom under President Rodrigo Duterte. Ressa has been a vocal critic of Duterte and the deadly drug war he launched in 2016, triggering what media advocates say is a grinding series of criminal charges, probes, and online attacks against her and Rappler. She was named a Time Person of the Year in 2018 for her work on press freedom, but a series of arrests and one conviction for cyber libel further grew her international profile and drew more attention to her struggle.
Rappler has had to fight for survival as Duterte's government accused it of violating a constitutional ban on foreign ownership and securing funding, as well as tax evasion. It has also been accused of cyber libel, a new criminal law introduced in 2012, the same year Rappler was founded. Duterte has attacked the website by name, calling it a fake news outlet over a story about one of his closest aides, though the government has said that it has nothing to do with any of the cases against her. Press freedom advocates disagree. Ressa is on bail pending an appeal against a conviction last year in a cyber libel case, for which she faces up to 6 years in prison. It is one of 7 cases she is fighting after 2 cyber libel suits were dismissed earlier this year. The Philippines is ranked 130th and Russia 152nd in the Reporters Without Borders 2021 World Press Freedom Index. The Philippines and Russia also rank 7th and 10th, respectively, in the Committee to Protect Journalists 2021 Global Impunity Index. While the media situations in both countries deserve security, the Philippines is a peculiarly interesting case. The Philippine press is commonly perceived to be among the freest in Asia, but it remains one of the most dangerous places in the world to practice journalism. Press freedom and human rights defenders continue to denounce the prevailing culture of impunity that the government claims ended under the administration of the Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte. The cases filed against leading online media organization Rappler and its CEO Maria Ressa made global headlines. Duterte criticized Rappler for being peddler of fake news and its license was revoked in 2018. Ironic given Ressa investigative work exposing disinformation on social media. In June 2020, Reza and former Rappler journalist Reynaldo Santos Jr. were convicted of cyber libel. Like the late dictator Ferdinand Marcos, who ordered broadcast network ABS-CBN's closure in 1972, Duterte said in 2019 that ABS-CBN would be out when its franchise expired in 2020. In the House of Representatives vote in July 2020, the broadcast network was shut down. Under the Duterte administration, news media, organizations, and journalists have been red tagged or accused of being communist sympathizers, and at least 2 journalists have been arrested and detained. There have also been cyber attacks launched at the websites of news media organizations in an attempt to prevent them from doing their work. While the distributed denial of service attacks, which overwhelm servers with too many data requests to shut it down, have been happening since 2018. The most recent attack on 2 news media organizations was carried out by the Philippine Army.
At least 190 journalists have been killed since 1986, 21 of them under the Duterte administration. The prevailing climate of media repression sends a chilling message to the journalists and media workers in the country that they should toe the administration line. National and local elections in the Philippines will be held in May 2022. It is uncertain to what extent the state of press freedom will be raised as an election issue. Candidates are expected to mouth the usual rhetoric about preserving democracy, including the importance of a vibrant press. As might be expected, Duterte and his supporters have denied media repression. They claim that ABS-CBN shutdown and Rappler's legal woes are isolated cases that do not affect other news media organizations in the country. Certain government officials continue to engage in red tagging journalists and news media organizations. Government agencies argue that their officials are merely expressing their personal opinion and not official policy. The Philippine National Police denies the existence of a culture of impunity that violates the rights of journalists and other sectors of society. Journalists, media workers, and other concerned groups need to push for press freedom to be an election issue. Candidates in the 2022 polls should explain clearly where they stand, beyond the usual rhetoric of defending democracy and basic freedoms. For a president who is known for joking about serious matters, Duterte now finds it awkward to congratulate Reza. His spokesperson belatedly acknowledged Reza for being the first Filipino Nobel Peace Prize awardee while trying to downplay notions that the award was a slap in the government's face. It's not credible for Duterte to sincerely congratulate Reza, whose journalistic achievements is born out of fighting the repression he perpetuates. In the Philippines, threats to press freedom are real. It should not be reduced to a mere joke, especially for those who claim to be defending it while engaging in repression.
And now for our solution or prevention. Freedom of the press is the most important wheel of democracy. Without a free press, a democracy cannot exist. In fact, the press is a great medium that conveys the truth to people. However, it cannot function fully if the press is not free. People must have heard the saying about the cost of freedom is eternal vigilance. Thus, it is the media's responsibility to remain vigilant for people's safety. Moreover, the freedom of people is monitored by the media. The press watches those in power to ensure they do not misuse it. In order to do this, freedom of press is required. The press has been given the responsibility of checking and balancing the administration and the government. Whenever there is a social evil lurking or corruption and oppression happens, the press is the first one to raise a voice. Moreover, we trust the process to collect, verify, and disseminate the facts and figures which influence people's decisions. If the press won't have the liberty to do all this, the people will be in the dark. Therefore, we need to see if any one of these liberties is taken away from the press, the voiceless will lose their voice, worse yet, if the press will be denied to do their job, the ones in power will run the country as per will. This will result in uniformed citizens who will thus become powerless. Moreover, We see how censorship of the press is nothing less than a dictatorship. When the government imposes censorship on the press, it obviously means they are trying to hide something. A person only hides lies and not the truth. Thus, this is the way citizens will be manipulated into thinking there is nothing wrong with the government.
There are 11 possible solutions as means of solving and preventing problems, especially when dealing with the press or anyone who could be the topic of media. The first 6 solutions are: first, when making media about a certain person who is of a high or average position, try to make sure you have everything prepared, like proofs, references, or any backup that would support your claim, and be careful not to break any laws regarding your works. Second, ask for legislation that protects press freedom. Legislators can strengthen the state shield law that allows journalists to protect confidential sources without fear of going to jail. Third, need to have a considerable amount of reputation. Fourth, know what constitutes defamation. Fifth, have a good backing. Sixth, institute a personal think twice before posting policy.
7. Publicize a statement articulating in its institution's values. Make clear that free speech and inclusion are core to the academic missions. 8. Avoid writing about people or companies that your personal dislike that could be considered malice. 9. Avoid the bias and prejudice. 10. Empower university to speak out against speech, even protected speech, that conflicts with the institution's values in clear and unequivocal language. Leader can make that case both for why even deeply offensive speech should be allowed and for why such speech is inimical to campus values. And last, create opportunities for students, faculty, and staff with opposing views to engage with one another on difficult issues.